Hey everybody, good afternoon. It's going to be a fairly quick one for me today. Another not on time start. Would have liked to do it in the morning, but I get sidetracked on other projects, working on the back end for my new chart engine, which you guys will have access to soon. Let's take a look. A little rebound. This is today's gold price, 4,900. A little bit higher than monthly close, and this would put it above the 100th percentile of a multiple above the trend for this month, which will need to be 4,900, and it is 4,926. I'm pretty confident, as I've been saying, that this is going to come back down. It could go up another 30% and come back down, but it's going to come back down. It's just how this stuff works. Let's look at silver. Whoops. Let's look at silver. Let me take that off while I check it. $86. I think we were a little bit worse yesterday. Wild ride for the silver bugs. I was laughing at Kurt's comments yesterday. But besides all the joking about trying to get a good spot price for physical, there's just no going back to digital assets being the core underlying linchpin of a monetary system. Not that I want to show you. I want to show you Bitcoin. All right. How much longer this curve will go, I just don't know. But I have more and more comfort in it, especially as we start to look at gold in Bitcoin terms and silver in Bitcoin terms. 78,000, 40th percentile, just below it. I think it's totally reasonable to expect we can puke out a little bit here in the next couple months down to 70,000, 65,000. All right, you can see the levels. But I'm pretty sure we're not going down to the 10. All right, which is, well, I say pretty sure. I'm very sure we're not going down to the 0, all right, which is 15,000. And as this is, again, a power curve, it's not completely scientifically correct to just use simple multiples as it is with exponential curves. I talked about this yesterday. But it's still a decent enough guide, and I like to just use multiples to show you where we can go. So basically 70% drop down would be extreme. I think especially for the lack of a boom. So I think we're looking at this. 60% drop down. That is from the trend, which is the black line. Max. If we go down there, a little bit below there for a couple days, I think it's possible. But again, I wouldn't worry too much. And look at these as buying opportunities for the best asset in the world, bar none, best collateral. Good afternoon, Bitcoin Polska. Hope you're doing very well today on a nice cold day. All right, let's go back to this. just broadly again, this is what we're up against. Okay? Federal Reserve's balance sheet or monetary base, which is slightly different than the total balance sheet. Actually, it can be trillions of dollars difference in the case of reverse repurchase agreements, which is a part of the broader money supply, but we're not going to get too much into that today. 31.7 trillion. I'll get you the list soon, but this is like 100 currencies now. It's pretty good. Dare I say the most detailed base money analysis in the world. It's definitely directionally correct to say that when the money supply generally goes up, Bitcoin goes up. Okay, we see it here. Peak, peak. But here, you know, it's we're in either in the middle of the cycle or going down after a cycle because the money supply went down for 3 years, Bitcoin went up for 3 years. The money supply will go up now. I've shown you guys some whether it's the Euro balance sheet, the Federal Reserve's balance sheet, Donald Trump's ridiculous pick for Fed chair. Not ridiculous, but we know very crony-like pick that kind of surprised people. I think they're going to print. So these values are going to continue to go up. This is, I update this fairly, this is going to be pretty backward looking, right? It's going to take a while for me to get even 2025 year end updated. But point is, we do see the Bitcoin price and it's gone down. And this is going to continue to go up. So again, timing it via the money supply, I would say, is not advisable. But obviously, I don't deny that over the long term, more money printing means higher Bitcoin prices. As it will mean higher asset prices for every asset, frankly, right? Your coffee goes up. Your bakery bread goes up. Everything goes up. This is how it goes. So the best escape hatch for all of that is Bitcoin. But we are in the midst. Like even if we go, hold on. Let's go after the 2017 pop before the craziness, right? So central banks, again, were in this deleveraging situation, trying to get back to reality after QE 123 of the global financial crisis. And Bitcoin kind of did similar things, right? Like it did go down, puked out here at the end of 2018, then had a nice run in spring of 2019, fell back again, and then lined up quite nicely with the great reflation of the pandemic. But I'm just showing you guys this because this is the most apples to apples comparable money supply with the UTXO set or the eventual 21 million coin supply, which, as we know, many have been lost, but basically the market cap of Bitcoin. Good morning, Fane Structure. Thanks for tuning in. And I want to highlight something I watched yesterday. I don't know if you guys watched it. Loser Steve Bannon, buddy of Alexander Dugin, the chief propagandist of, not chief propagandist, sort of weird philosopher of Putin that doesn't really have any power in Russia, just like Bannon doesn't really have any power in America. He gave this interview, which I don't know if you guys saw it. This is not a screenshot of it, but he gave this sort of weird 60 minutes preparation interview to Epstein, which was released in the files. I watched the first hour. It's 2 hours long. I watched the first hour. And it's funny, when when you spend your time, which I do, and a lot of you guys do as well, I know, but you spend a lot of your time learning about something like the monetary system, and then you see someone like Epstein get on there and try to talk about how fractional reserve banking is such a myth. And look, I know it's an unstable proposition, and I know that there are a lot of problems with fractional reserve banking, but Jeffrey Epstein is hardly the first person to talk about fractional reserve banking, read about it, write about it, which he didn't do. And Bannon's trying to make him sound like this genius finance guy, which, as we know from Nassim Taleb, he was non-existent in the currency markets. It was all just a scam, as we know, right? But it is sort of actually encouraging, to me at least, when someone sort of acts like they know a lot about a topic, but obviously at the end of the day don't really know much. This is what was going on in this Epstein interview. Like, they talked a lot about the global financial crisis, which he was in jail at the time. And I need to, actually, this is still a newer sort of chart tech here, so I need to zoom in a little bit better. So this is the global base money supply before the 2008 crisis. It was certainly, record highs. China was booming. But as I've said many times, the hot money was not here even. The hot money was in repurchase agreements, money market funds, which is what stable coins are analogous to. So money market funds, repurchase agreements, they were really, really flying high in America particularly, which is where of course, the nexus of the crisis was. And yes, it's complicated. He was trying to say all these things like, oh, financial system is the beating heart of the human body in this, and trying to just do all these goofy analogies. It is a complicated system, but at the end of the day, it's not that complicated. I mean, bad legislation can lead to unstable markets and compound growth can be your friend in an up market, but can absolutely be your enemy in a down market. And that was what was happening. But notice how you don't even see that here. I mean, it might seem like it's looking crazy, like bottom left to upper right, but this is just a stable compound growth of, 6, 7, 8% per year. Doesn't matter. This was not where all the crazy speculation was happening, actually. It's happening in the broader money supplies. So don't take your financial analysis from Jeffrey Epstein. Now, if they had chosen to, be sort of normal like all other banking crises, you could have let the rich people go bankrupt and the system would have started out normal again, but that's not what they chose to do, as you guys know. So the sort of the bizarreness of everything ironically happened right when Bitcoin was born. And then we get these monetary based supplies which grow way faster. 15%, 16, 17% per year for some of them. I mean, Turkey's growing at like 40% right now. That started even later, like around here. And it becomes a race to the bottom. I would recommend watching it. It's funny, I never heard the dude talk. He just sounds like this, just got this thick New York accent. Just a complete scam artist. it's good that we have an escape hatch. We have an escape hatch, a release valve, which is Bitcoin. But just because they, you know, did this madness right here, right? Which you can't even really, I mean, you can see it grows very quickly here, but, you know, the US led it, right, with QE 1, 2, and 3, first time ever, right? This craziness, this bump right there. QE 1, 2, 3. The fact that that sort of Pandora's box was opened, it doesn't mean like the world's going to end. It just means they're going to print more. They're going to print more to paper over problems down the road. And it doesn't mean the whole world is going to collapse. They should have let the rich people collapse. But collapse would have just been go bankrupt. Their assets would have been worth less on the market. Other people, better entrepreneurs could come in and pick them up. But it's very good that we have Bitcoin and gold and silver to take in what has proven to be just a more, it's more like Japan, right? So Japan was doing this earlier. Let's see if I can get everything but Japan off. You can't see it as much, especially in dollar terms. So this is Japan in dollar terms. They were doing this earlier, right? They had a big Nikkei bubble, which again, you can't really see here. I mean, you can see a little bit actually, some reserves, but the bubble was in the stock market, too much lending. And so this is, again, in dollar terms. You'd see this more in yen. But they were printing way more. Okay, everybody printed a lot during Y2K, which is pretty funny. Way more even before the global financial crisis. And then, you know, they said, hold my beer to the United States. As the United States did QE 1, 2, 3, it's amazing that the yen actually has held its value relative to other currencies during this crisis. But I'm just saying, I don't really see a big crash, more as sort of a zombie inflationary future. And you can sort of see that future by looking at the past. So Japan is one of the countries that's been doing this the longest. Sort of taught the United States how to get going with the excess asset purchases covered by money printing, and then the rest of the world follows. The European Union follows. Oops, I'm going to have to refresh that. All right, we'll go here because I'm still working on this database. Morning, Kurt. Not necessarily. Some are. I mean, Turkey, I could have had Turkey. I think because I zoomed in and this is, hold on, let me see if this is still going. Anyway, let me tell you just the latest. All right, so here's the chart again. And stats-wise, China. So China in the last year has gone up. No, last month has been a lot. Actually, 57% from August to September, which is wild. But that's an annualized rate. They're not necessarily going to hit that. That's an annualized rate, I should say. 4.4% over the year for China, which is the only one that actually is printing. Everybody else is declining. China in general, like over the long term, is at 14% per year. But that's a huge country that grows fast, and you know we know about it. But then you got, you know, like Russia, 24% all time, which is huge. Brazil, Argentina, 100%. Turkey, 47% all time. So, and they're, by the way, they're in the other column. Basically, all the global south. I'm just, to not clutter the chart, I'm putting them in the other column. So there's a mix. I mean, Turkey's actually in here because they're in NATO. But I still like this chart because of the blues, the reds, just to see. Nobody's given up. Nobody's given up. No matter what anybody says, like all the dollar doom and gloom newsletter writers, which I don't disagree with generally, like their sentiments, but, you know, China's going to do what it needs to do. Russia's going to need to do what it's failing. And usually that's going to be papering over their problems. But I see more of a zombie style future than anything else. And let's be honest, they did all coordinate to do some hard work of actually decreasing the money supply these years, the base money supply. Still laughing about your experiences at the silver market. So anyway, I did watch that Epstein Bannon first hour. I need to watch the second hour. It's just such scammers, such losers. Quickly before we get to prices, back to the politics. Some people on the stream were saying, of course, he's a not a Russian, but a Israeli American asset. Again, he might be, he might have been. It actually sounds more likely than a Russian asset. But what I would say, this is the way that I would frame it, as far as all that Russian stuff that's coming out with Epstein, is there's strong negative proof. I'll explain this. Strong negative proof for Russian intelligence involvement as well, since as far as can be seen, there are no Russian targets mentioned in the files, despite extensive Russian involvement and discussion. They were the hunters, not the hunted. So does that mean that like Putin was running Epstein? I tend to doubt it, but I do think, this is an information war that we're in now fully. So Daily Mail reports that Russian he collected compromising material on prominent figures for Russian intelligence. That's what Daily Mail reported. And then, of course, you have Putin mentioned 1,000 times, Moscow 10,000 times. Robert Maxwell was like a triple agent. It was pretty wild. He was like Israeli, Czech, British. He's a quadruple agent. He was Russian as well. And he also wrote all of our textbooks when we were younger. But I'm just trying to give you guys, like, I'm usually pretty hardcore on Russia, and I am here, but you can go very far down the rabbit hole. I'm not sure. Like this comment, for example, like exactly what I noted about WikiLeaks Panama Papers. The notable absence of Russians. That's when the shoe dropped for me on Assange. So Kasparov, like some, think that Assange is just the absence of Russian involvement showed that there was at least some tacit, or I don't know, maybe Assange was being manipulated. I kind of doubt that. But he just went along with Russian interference. Like everybody hates America so much, right? You hate America. You want America to fall, that you will go along with Russian intelligence. The problem is Russians, they'll have their foot on the gas all the way through. Like 15 years ago, now. So that's just what I'm trying to warn people for, is this, like, have your eyes wide open with this. There's just, was Putin running Epstein? Probably not, but this is just all they do. They love just slinging shit against the wall. This was pretty wild. Wall Street Journal, there was a whistleblower complaining against Tulsi Gabbard. Her whistleblower complaint against Tulsi Gabbard is so sensitive, it's locked in a safe. She is the clearest. I mean, this is a woman who met with Assad because he's, supposedly an Alawite moderate Christian, not not Christian, but Islamic. Alawites are Christians, right? I can't even remember now. Got to look that up. It's not exactly Christian, right? It's an offshoot of Shia. But there's like some closer link to Christians with the Alawites, whatever. It's just ridiculous how this woman is the director of national intelligence for America. It's unbelievable. I love the thumbnail. So this is the World Monetary Base. And you're not going to find this anywhere but here. So congrats for tuning in. Because there's no, like, IMF has some APIs, but you really got to go to every central bank's website, and it gets confusing with different groups. Like, you got the European Central Bank, you got the Caribbean Central Bank, you got the Central Bank of West African Nations. You have different, so there's groups of currencies, there's unions, there's non-currency unions. But I'm trying to give a political sort of color to this, showing you Western nations, communist nations, slash shitty oligarch nations like Russia, and sort of the global south, which is notable. I mean, India is in the gray. India is a huge country, but they're in the gray. I probably should pull Switzerland out. Switzerland's actually in the gray too because they're not in NATO. I could put Switzerland in the blue, but they take Russian money anyway, so who knows? But my point is, don't think too hard about this chart. Don't think about the value of the dollar or whatever. I mean, this is what it is. This is fiat legal money. This is essentially the balance sheet of every nation's central bank. So don't think too hard about it. Just know that it grows. And it's the most comparable money supply to Bitcoin. So here I just have it's the same chart, but just showing you the US here. And then the total, and then Bitcoin. So as I said, Bitcoin generally goes up, but it can go down. So it's not a perfect predictor. It will turn around. I'm 100% sure of that. But we're in a divergence right now. Yeah, I agree with you, man. I mean, I agree with you 100%. I don't know, what you think about you seem like a pretty reasonable guy, but I mean, just the hysteria that's going on in the U.S. There's and by reasonable, I mean, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. So it's my echo chamber take, but it just seems like, to me, I know America has a lot of divisive politics right now, but all this stuff that's come out of the Epstein files, it stinks of Russian involvement. And like you said, it's not going to be easily traced to Putin or whatever. They just want to shit on our parade. Like, we can't use their technology. We can't use their social networks. Russia has these shitty social networks they want everybody to use, but they use ours. It's the same with China. So I agree with you 100%. I want to just show you an interview with a guy who's a strong Ukraine supporter. And he gives a quote, which I've said a lot. Sorry, I'm trying to find it. So I'll find it for you guys tomorrow. I don't have it ready, but this whoops. This podcast, this guy's very good. Silicon Curtain. So his name's Jonathan Fink, this guy. Here he's got Cypher, who's an old CIA guy. Again, I'm not defending everything American CIA does. It's not him. I can't find it, but he's interviewed this guy a few times who has said, he's on record, like this is a CIA officer, like, you know, a high level CIA position. And he said, when the Soviet Union collapsed, the Russians had more agents in America than the Americans had around the world. When the Soviet Union collapsed, the Russians had more agents in America than Americans had around the world. So it just, they may be limited on resources, but this is what they do. This is just what they do. And so all this MAGA crazy, Alex Jones, Steve Bannon type, I'm not saying America's perfect. I'm never saying that, but there's the rule of law and there's not the rule of law. And Russia knows it's in their interest just to not follow. I mean, according to them, I wish that they would join the family of nations and be normal, but they've chosen to just not follow the rules and spy. It's like when they murdered Alexander Litvinenko, who, by the way, there's a lot of, I shouldn't use the word, but the word that Jeffrey Epstein is accused of, I'm probably getting shadow banned for even using these words. Not that it really matters. I don't have huge followers, but the very bad crime that a lot of these Epstein clients are being accused of. This guy accused Putin of, by the way. His name's Alexander Litvinenko. He's a former KGB agent. He was writing a book on Putin. He was working with a lot of the oligarchs and expat Russians that had to escape from Putin in the 2000s, notably Boris Berezovsky, who Putin took his TV channel. And by the way, Putin took his TV channel in the year 2000. Putin came into power in the year 2000. Reminds me of that Conan sketch. And in the year 2000, he took Berezovsky's private media network. He also took this other oligarch's, Gusinski's private media network in, I think, the year 2001. It was called NTV. But anyway, just to make the point, they murdered this guy with polonium in the UK in 2006. And it was about that time that, at least for us, because I was living over here back in Latvia at the time, coming back from the US, and it was already then where I was like, okay, these people haven't changed. And they just won't. I mean, they just won't. So I agree with you 100% with this point. It's not about left or right. This is why they donate to Jill Stein. This is why Jill Stein gets money from the Russians, and this is why Tenet Media, the right wing, goofy front for Russia, the Kremlin, actually, they gave all that money to Benny Johnson and Dave Rubin and Tim Pool. So it's the left or the right, And though you don't see hard evidence, but where does it say? Maybe it's somewhere else. The Brits are investigating now, like Brexit, more because Brexit itself was a huge win for the Russians. To take, to have a strong bloc who negotiates for all of its members, which the European Union, they negotiate trade as a bloc. It may not be the best, cleanest thing, but it's better to be in the bloc than outside the bloc. And that was a huge win for Russia, Brexit, and Trump is the next big win, it seems. Yeah. Same. I mean, I was physically sick when I was reading the the Wall Street Journal, and I think there was even the Washington Post. There were some of these articles that came out about Witkoff and his sort of rise to prominence in the last year with the Russians. Which, if you follow that enough, I mean, that was a psychological operation. It was going to be Keith Kellogg, who was the envoy to Ukraine, which in this case actually made Trump look good. This is where Trump's weird. Like, he's not. It's hard to know with Trump, but I mean, clearly he's he's in the files, and I'm not giving Trump a pass at all. But at least he was gonna have Keith Kellogg as the envoy, and the Russians went to MBS in Saudi Arabia. They did a psychological profile on Steve Witkoff, who was at that time just the envoy to the Middle East, and they said, we want him to be the envoy for Ukraine as well, and that's what happened. Steve Witkoff still has never been to Ukraine, even though he's the envoy for Ukraine and the Middle East. He's not the envoy to Russia. He's the envoy for Ukraine. And this Kalen Robertson, who had a really good interview as well, he was at this Ukrainian breakfast in Davos. This guy's done some crazy reporting in Ukraine. I mean, just about the drone strikes and everything. And there's a video of him trying to be the only like normal journalist in Davos actually asking Witkoff in let's see if I can find it on Twitter, at this Ukrainian breakfast, like, what is it with all these deals that have been reported with you and Russia, this and this and this? And of course they don't talk to him. He just walks away. But it's so out in the open. It's so blatant. Here he is. His goons wouldn't respond to him, and you know, right after Davos, he went to meet Vladimir Putin and had a great old time. So there you go. So yeah, the fact that Jeffrey Epstein is is interviewed by Steve Bannon talking about fractional reserve banking actually tells me we're definitely on the right case with Bitcoin, because, like, I'm not defending fractional reserve banking, but the guy's just clearly a scammer. Tried to talk like he was knew so much about the money supply and currencies and everything. I can tell you, after studying fractional reserve banking, it wasn't even because of what most people say. It wasn't the demand deposits that caused the crisis. It wasn't even the monetary base that caused the crisis. Look at the monetary base before the crisis. It was the repurchase agreements, the money market funds, which all that stuff was packaged up in the mortgage-backed securities and stuff. And then Epstein tried to say that derivatives weren't part of the crisis. This was exactly part of the crisis. It was a lot of these derivatives and CFDs and instruments that basically had to do with junk securities that caused it. So, look, I'm not saying I know everything about the financial system, but it's unbelievable. Just another little quick history before we get back to the charts. This was, so Estonia just had their independence yesterday. Congratulations to my Estonian friends. All right, first independence was in 1918. Latvia, we had a very similar peace treaty. The Finns had one as well. Of course, Russia invaded in 1940 into Finland. 1939 into Finland in the Winter War. Of course, the Budapest Memorandum. And people are so wondering, like, why people are skeptical about a Russian peace treaty. This literally says, it's the same language in Latvia. This was the Russian, so this was before the Soviet Union. This was 1920. Russia's still in this state of civil war, or they call it the Slavic Civil War, which the Ukrainians hate that term because the Ukrainians don't look at themselves as Russian, but they call it the Russian Civil War. Maybe Slavic Civil War is a better way to call it. But say on this date in 1920, the Tartu Peace Treaty was signed between Estonia and Russia. This is the socialist Russia, shithole country, whereby the latter renounced all rights over Estonia forever, for all time. It said the same with Latvia. And that lasted 1,764 days. Because on December 1st, 1924, that Russia attempted with little green men type takeover of Estonia, but they failed, then came back in 1940. Anybody who thinks that these guys are negotiating in good faith, or it's just going to be land swaps, or Trump's golfing buddy, Steve Witkoff, is going to be able to bring Putin to the table, that's not how they operate. Another one, Russia tried to install on the Romanian presidency, spent $200 million, ban and interviews this guy. And then just last one on the news. This one makes my heart hurt, but at least she's not dead. Minus 21 and trying to keep smiles on your face. Unbelievable. Oh man, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's not that groundbreaking of a thought from my side, but by the way, here's another. This happened to be Epstein's publicist. All right, young Russian girl who's seen right here with Putin. I mean, again, how much Putin was actually running Epstein, I think was quite in doubt. Whether Epstein considered himself a Russian agent, that's quite in doubt. But he was absolutely wanted to make money, making money, sending them compromat, all the stuff, for sure. Where's the picture? Yeah. I mean, this is sort of how I'm looking at it. It's pretty wild. I mean, sitting here in the border of civilization, wondering if Russia's going to invade you again. It's wild. Again, I still don't think we're going back to 15 ounces of silver per 1 ounce of gold. It's just not how the trends work. So maybe we do for, this level is 31. And now it is 36. So we're still on a slight uptrend, which means going back to, again, even though it's 15 to 1 for 300 years, officially from Isaac Newton, or 400 years, whatever it was, actually going to 15 to 1 and staying there, I think would be quite crazy. I guess I need to take that. Anyway, a couple more guys, and then I'm going to probably finish for today. Let me know if you want to see any in particular, but I want to show you BTC Silver and BTC Gold, just because it's funny and at an extreme still. Sorry for the dead time. I'm so good at this. So it is interesting that the Bitcoin price is not exactly helping the Bitcoiners, i.e., it's still helping the silver bugs. But we're still on a bounce. So Bitcoin in terms of silver. If Kurt wants to get back at it, if you have any. Not as cheap as 700 ounces per Bitcoin. Still 900 ounces is pretty good. So again, as a point of risk here, I have no idea if this is the bottom, but I do say that it's highly unlikely it goes too much lower. I mean, every day we're setting a record on this chart. It's pretty amazing. Right? Because if we go back to April 2011, which is here, right? So this is when silver was at a, well, you can't even see anything because I'm all at zeros here, but silver was last at a high, April 2011, and it actually is not that crazy relative to what it turned out to be with the trend over the long term. So you know, we can't get much lower than this. Can't give silver bugs too many more opportunities. Although nothing changes on a dime. I really got to reorganize this. Changing so many things with the database that. So here comes gold. Let's say again, these are the two most interesting charts for Bitcoin right now, because if hard money investors are buying gold and silver, fine, but they're also, by doing that, giving, and Bitcoin not reacting, they're giving this weird signal that Bitcoin is super cheap relative to the metals, and something that I just cannot fathom lasts too much longer. Although admittedly, gold does not have the absolute low of 8 ounces per Bitcoin as we are doing with silver, which is still crazy expensive at 965 ounces. I mean, relative to, back in 2015, it was 20 ounces of silver per Bitcoin. So when I say cheap, I am wholly speaking in relative terms. But it is even cheaper than this, right? No, still it's all right. So we bounced. This was maybe this is the bottom, in fact. Right. So 700 ounces of silver happened here in 2022, and that is in fact where we bottomed. And if that holds, I would say it's a beautiful thing to look at gold and silver relative to Bitcoin, because that's sort of it's a governor versus how low the dollar price can go, which is not too bad relative to the trend. Good point. I can't stand listening to Shift, to be honest. So maybe I'll catch the clips, but I highly encourage new people for sure that are trying to figure out the markets. And like you say, gold bugs views, which are all Bitcoin bugs views for sure. But even I would say whatever their arguments are for gold, like the main ones, like hedge against inflation, you know, it's private, you can take it anywhere. Like those main arguments obviously all apply to Bitcoin. Yeah, precisely. They forget all about subjective value when it comes to Bitcoin. Is it pumping now? Not a live chart guy with this software, so gold's up a little bit more, maybe 78 still. Is he an investor? Yeah, I mean it's just so embarrassing. Like you're not going to get any extra value from Tether Gold or any other tradable gold. I mean, and even marginal value more than something like gold money, which Peter Schiff is already invested in. You got to pay. You got to pay for those big doors. And did he say that there's not going to be any premium over or under spot if you trade that asset? I guess this is an analysis I probably should do is say Tether Gold, also the GLD, right, which is the ETF, main biggest ETF, and then the spot gold price itself. And then, you know, it doesn't matter which one you pick. You're never going to get the full spot value that you see. Whereas with Bitcoin, you can get damn close, damn close. So we'll have to analyze it here then, right? I guess you just have to see over a long period, like what's the trend line of. It's very easy actually. It's like, what's the trend line of the GLD? What's the trend line of the spot itself? And then those other things like Tether Gold or other. Are those other ones even around, like Digix DAO and all these things? These initial crypto pumps. I see price not available for Digix Gold token and Yahoo Finance, but yeah, and not even that. I mean, it is true that holding it in the last 3 years would be quite valuable. I mean, quite good, 40% per year, which is almost as good as Bitcoin because Bitcoin was higher than that during that time period. Yep, very true. But I would still come back to the chart. I'll show you guys this before. I'm gonna have to unfortunately jump soon, but the the overall picture is still steady worldwide. I got to take off Euro area because it's kind of this is sort of overlapping, but Central banks hold a little bit more than this, $6 trillion worth of gold roughly. And it's flat. I mean, it's not like, I mean, it increases at like a percent. What is it? Is it a 0.5% or a percent? I always forget my numbers with this one. I've told you guys a few times on it, but since 2008, it is since 2009, it's 1.2% per year. 1.2% per year. Doesn't seem to me to merit 40% gold price rises in the last 3 years, 40% per year. I mean, I get it. I agree. They're the biggest buyers for sure, and it's easiest. I agree. Good call. Another thing that I wish I had handy, but I don't, but we can share another one. Thank you for that. Nice. Yeah, that certainly bucked the trend. That's a good sign. That's a nice liquid sign. I agree. All these outflows. I can get you guys something like this as well on the chart, which would be cool once it's up to speed. Yeah. That's good news, actually. Thanks for pointing that out. You know, I really like. I understand Safety's point that it's catching up to all the central bank money printing, but again, this line, which is still, you know, it's 80% R squared, 79% R squared. It's not terrible. It's pretty decent, in fact. So again, this line is still only 5.5% per year. So, and of course, the reason is because of this 20-year bear with gold. And that would be a big knock on wood. Like, I wouldn't say that with, you know, 100% certainty, but I cannot see how a bull returning in the metals is not also good for Bitcoin. And even if the metals actually, you know, say this, I don't know, turns into the same thing, like another 10 years sideways movement, or, you know, central banks don't buy as much as people think, I still think Bitcoin is way poised to, you know, this is when you just go back to the power curve, because, you know, Bitcoin's been through all this. Okay, yes, it's only been through sort of the peak of the last major gold silver run, which was right here in 2011. It was just getting started with the price. But, you know, this curve is so strong, such a good R squared, that I just do not see Bitcoin ever falling into this sort of 20-year bear trap that central banks put it in the 90s. You know, Alan Greenspan said right here, central banks stand ready to sell gold should the price rise. He said that. Big quote from Gata, as you guys know. And then you go here, right? Like I said, it's not a guarantee that the Bitcoin price goes up, but it is correlated. And I think we're ready to, at some point in the next couple months, turn it around. Yep. I need to get that for you guys. That's probably the best thing out there on the cycles. Agree. Right. Yeah, it's an interesting question. You know, I've had friends tell me that it's a possibility it goes back there. But again, they're not looking at it from a power curve. They're looking at it from a sort of a weird. Let me show you the old exponential versus power, because this is a good point, actually. There are definitely still predictions, as I'm sure you guys have seen, that Bitcoin could go to 15K. I have a very hard time believing that. Let me show you. So first of all, I have a hard time believing it from this, which would be super rare, right? Even here, all right, it's possible, 15K. It's like set in the worst possible. But this is it is wild that it's doing this with silver, right? Where's Bitcoin silver? Because this is such a rare thing to hit. You know, it's a 90% drop from the trend, right? And because it's a power curve, it works differently than an exponential curve. So, as I talked about yesterday, you know, if you put them all back, I know this is bad. It's going to look bad. It's very hard to see, but this is log now. And ignore these dates because they're not incorrect either. But the tooltip is correct on the dates. And on log, you really can't do this analysis that I do. So this doesn't really make sense. This doesn't make sense. They need to go more converge. You can't keep the same multiples. And so I have really a hard time even seeing that it gets below 10% this time. We need to do basically the quantile regression, which I have, but I'm not doing at the moment. So I really see, you know, 50, 60 as the bottom. And then also, again, to put a price on it, like the people that think 15K is in play are looking at it like an exponential asset, like it's going to do some weird ABC correction from the overall exponential trend. And the exponential trend is just, it's not an exponential asset. It does not work like, just look at that. It's not an exponential. It's not a straight line on log linear. It's just not. So that you do get these weird 15K, 20K price targets from these people, but I don't buy them. You can clearly see the power trend is way better fit for what Bitcoin does. Nice sustainable curve. Yep. Everybody read it. I don't get any royalties. I want to have the guy. I want to find the guy and have him on my show. Like I said, I think he was an old like wine journalist in Europe, and I don't even know if he's alive. I presume he's alive. It's a 10-year-old book. It's a great book. Hopefully, I can give the guy some sales. If anybody knows how to contact them, let me know. And I also find it very odd that, you know, back to this chart, right? Like Poland I hope Poland starts buying some Bitcoin because they're, they were in the crosshairs at the exact same risky time from Russia and Germany, and they're buying gold again. But there's very few countries that are like really going hardcore like China. And like we said, look at Russia, stalled out. And this is probably, according to news headlines, you never can quite know, but they say that they've either levered up their gold holdings or they've sold them. We'll see how the official accounting gets done of these, but yeah, you'd be the person to ask, wouldn't you? I sad to hear that, I guess, but just politically, people like gold more. We talked about this the other day, but Tether has about the same amount as Sweden, I believe. This is about how much gold Tether holds as well. About 4 million ounces. Yeah, crypto is such a bad word in every in every context, and I still have his name on my podcast. But I don't think other than Poland, India, China, I don't think there's anybody else on this chart that's growing. And India well, not slowly actually, decent clip. So if you look at only these countries, it looks like a lot of gold buying. It's true. But compared to everybody else, it's flat. You take those away, it's flat. Of course, we don't know if what's here. Another good chart, which I need to show you guys, is the gold reserves as a proportion of the monetary base, because that would be the asset side of the balance sheet that balances this liability, and it's high, right? It's about the level of, so worldwide is about 6 trillion. So it's something like what the U.S. monetary base itself looks like. If you want to sort of look at the backing of central bank money, it's about this much is in gold. Just FYI, which increases, even though it's not really increasing, it's increasing because of the price, mostly the value. But I will try to get, I'll try to get more of those updated soon. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in today. I'm sorry it's going to be a quick one. If you can, please just throw a little sats this way, but I will have a really good chart engine for people to subscribe to in less than 2 months. So you can look forward to that. In the meantime, you can follow me here. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Always helpful to hear your thoughts. Stay sane together as we navigate this craziness. Where's the price I want to leave you at? Can't even find it. Did I close it? There it is. And I just inverted it. $15K is highly unlikely in my view. 60, much more. but maybe it doesn't even get there. Thank you, Bitcoin Polska. Thank you, Kurt. Thanks, everybody else. Have a good day.